My family carved Redwood Ranch out of wild earth nearly a century ago. 200 acres of pasture and cedar, passed down like a promise through 4 generations. My grandfather always said land was more than soil. It was memory, sweat, and blood buried beneath every fence post. For decades, nothing threatened that truth. Not storms, not droughts, not neighbors. But the subdivision called Willow Creek changed everything. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. At first, it was subtle. A glossy welcome packet appeared in our mailbox, complete with HOA bylaws and cheery slogans about protecting property values. We laughed. Redwood Ranch wasn't in their development. Their rules meant nothing, but the laughter dried up fast. Soon, anonymous complaints were filed with the county, claims about excessive dust from our gravel road, livestock waste near their walking trails, even methane from our cattle endangering families. Each complaint meant paperwork, hearings, wasted time. Then came the notices. Laminated slips stapled to our mailbox, each one printed with the HOA's logo. Warning: unkempt structures visible from public right-of-way. Reminder: noise ordinances enforced at all times. They were absurd. Our barns predated their neighborhood by 50 years, but they kept coming. One morning, I found a dead fish nailed to a notice, a crude warning scrawled in Sharpie: sell before it gets worse. Things did get worse. Someone jammed peanut butter into the barn's lock. Twice, our gate's chain was cut, letting calves wander dangerously close to the county road. My grandfather discovered a spike of rock salt on his tractor's hood, the kind meant to ruin an engine block if you turn the ignition. What once felt like harassment began to look like sabotage, and then came their HOA cops. White SUVs started idling near our gate at night. Men in matching polos and clipboards trespassed onto the pasture, taking photos of our cattle like they were evidence. One had the nerve to tell my grandfather face to face that his pasture was unsightly and hurting property values. That was the moment we stopped laughing. So we fought back with the one weapon they didn't expect: documentation. I mounted infrared cameras on the barn, the gate, and the house. Every trespass, every truck, every clipboard was caught in high definition and uploaded to cloud storage. My grandfather, meticulous as ever, logged each incident in his weathered leather notebook. Same place he writes down calving records and hay deliveries. I printed every notice, screenshot every anonymous text, filed it all neatly in binders. Then I drove into town. At Sheriff Brody's office, I laid the stack of evidence on his desk: photos of men trespassing, timestamps of vehicles at 2 a.m., even the infamous dead fish stapled to a flyer. He didn't laugh. He didn't wave it off. He said, "This is harassment. You did right reporting it." I also called the county zoning board. They confirmed the obvious. The HOA had no authority over Redwood Ranch. None. No easement rights, no environmental permits, nothing. Their committee was a paper tiger. The only question left was what they'd do next: back down quietly or escalate. We didn't have to wait long to find out. It was just after midnight when I heard the crunch of tires on our gravel drive. The cameras blinked on, showing the white SUV again. Only this time, 3 men climbed out. No clipboards, no flashlights, just crossbars gripped like weapons, and chest vests that says HOA cop. I was still reaching for my phone when Grandpa walked in from his room. He already had the shotgun slung low, jacket zipped, boots laced. He didn't say a word, just gave me the kind of look that told me this wasn't the first time he dealt with men creeping onto land that wasn't theirs. "They're here again," I whispered. "I know," he said. His voice was flat, final. We stepped onto the porch together. The night air was sharp, and the men were already halfway up the walk. One pointed his bar toward the barn. "By order of Willow Creek HOA, this property is condemned. We're clearing it tonight." Grandpa lifted the shotgun across his forearm. "This isn't Willow Creek. This is private land. Turn around and leave while you can." The man in front smirked. "Old man, you don't scare me." He swung the bar up, ready to charge. Grandpa's voice cut like steel. "Last warning." They didn't listen. The leader lunged, crossbar raised like a club. Grandpa pulled the trigger. The blast echoed across the pasture, and the man spun sideways, dropping hard, his weapon clattering onto the gravel. The second man roared, lifting his bar and rushing the porch. Grandpa's second shot dropped him mid-stride, a brutal wound tearing through his leg. He hit the ground screaming, blood spreading dark across the dirt. Only the third man was left standing, frozen in the yard. He stared at Grandpa, then at his friends bleeding in the dirt. Slowly, he dropped his bar, hands rising high above his head. "On your knees," Grandpa barked. The man obeyed, trembling as he sank into the gravel. Inside, my phone was still pressed to my ear. "Sheriff's Department," the dispatcher said. "Units are en route." I didn't have to explain much. The gunshots were loud enough for them to hear. For a long few minutes, the only sounds were the groans of the injured and the steady click of Grandpa racking another shell. He didn't aim at anyone this time, just held the shotgun ready, eyes locked on the man kneeling in the yard. Red and blue lights flickered against the tree line minutes later. Deputies stormed up the drive, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Grandpa lowered his gun and stepped back onto the porch. He didn't need to say anything. The scene spoke for itself. Two trespassers lay wounded, one barely conscious. The third was face down in the gravel, cuffed before he could blink. And Grandpa, he stood calm on the porch, like a sentinel who'd simply defended what was his. The HOA's little midnight patrol had ended in blood, sirens, and failure. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. An ambulance crew patched the two bleeding men before hauling them toward town. The one with the leg wound was still howling, cursing Grandpa with every breath. The other, the leader who'd taken the first blast, was pale, drifting in and out of consciousness. The third trespasser, the one who'd surrendered, did all the talking once deputies sat him on the bumper of a cruiser. He spilled everything: who sent them, what they were told, and why. "We were told this place was condemned," he muttered, voice shaky. Said the HOA board signed off. Vice President Lydia Carver herself said she wanted it done tonight. I'll never forget the look on the deputies' faces when he named her. Lydia Carver had been circling my family's land like a hawk for months, feeding lies to her HOA board that Redwood Ranch was blight, holding back her shiny subdivision. But hearing she'd escalated to sending men with weapons, that was the nail in her coffin. By dawn, the news vans were parked down the road. Word spread fast. HOA vigilantes shot during trespass at Family Ranch. Reporters swarmed the courthouse when Grandpa and I gave statements. He stood solid, his voice calm. "They came to my home with weapons. I defended myself. That's all there is to it." The sheriff backed him up. His camera footage showed the crossbars, the threats, and Grandpa's clear warnings before firing. Under state law, stand your ground and the castle doctrine, he was within every right to shoot when attacked on his property. The district attorney announced there would be no charges against Grandpa. The three fake enforcers weren't so lucky. The men were charged with armed trespass, aggravated assault, conspiracy, and attempted burglary. Prosecutors added impersonating officers after deputies found the bogus HOA cop vests in their SUV. The two hospitalized men spent weeks under guard, one with a shattered femur, the other recovering from chest trauma and collapsed lung. Both were shackled to their beds until they were stable enough for arraignment. Then came Lydia Carver. When investigators pulled phone records, it was all there. Texts and calls coordinating the midnight visit, payments funneled through HOA funds, even an email draft where she bragged this would finally clear the ranch problem. She was arrested on charges of solicitation of aggravated assault, criminal conspiracy, misuse of HOA funds, and attempted unlawful eviction. The courtroom was standing room only when her arraignment began. Lydia tried to smile for cameras, but her campaign dreams were ash in her hands. Residents from her own subdivision testified against her, furious at how far she'd gone. One neighbor said she'd been bragging about bringing order to the neighborhood. Another admitted Lydia pressured them to sign blank forms she later used to justify bogus enforcement actions. By the time the civil case wrapped, she was ruined. A judge awarded damages to my family for harassment and trespass. The HOA itself was fined heavily and placed under receivership. Lydia's political career was dead before it began. And Grandpa? He walked free, his name cleared. He never boasted, never gloated. He just cleaned his shotgun, leaned it back in its rack, and said, "This land's been defended before. It'll be defended again if it has to." The HOA thought they could break a family with intimidation. Instead, they broke themselves on the barrel of an old man's resolve.